Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the last session of our 322. And so today we have Correia de Barros with us, our distinguished guest for this seminar. And so, Anna, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for traveling from Porto just to be here with us. And I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting seminar. So I'm going to introduce briefly Anna before I give the floor to her. So Anna is a senior researcher at Fraunhofer, Portugal and ICOS, and the head of the Human-Centered Design Department. She conducts design research, strongly informed by the qualitative fieldwork. She has a background in industrial design, and she worked in the design studio prior to earning the PhD in industrial engineering and management from Universidade da Beira Interior. She was a researcher at Unitcom YAD, and so we are good friends for a while. So that's also a thing that deserves to be highlighted. And she did research in the innovation area in rehabilitation center and lectured at different universities and participated also in numerous research and development projects. Anna's research interests include assistive products like products for chronic disease and disability, and includes inclusive design. That said, Anna, the floor is yours, and thank you so much again on behalf of YAD and Unitcom. We are truly grateful for having you with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Emilia, for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Actually, I must say that I wrote Emilia saying, I think that I have some new and interesting material. Could I come and speak someday? And she said, sure, we have this event. So kind of forced myself into the event. And thank you so much for being here and online as well. And what I will try to do is to give you some insights, things that we've learned from two apparently very different projects, one on human sexuality and another one on shop floor workers in manufacturing. That gave us lots of lessons about design research, user research in particular, that I thought might be interesting for design researchers in a master's, in a PhD, whatever, or post that phase, because it really challenged many preconceptions. So I will do the first part talking about one project and the second part talking about the other projects. I hope that you can find some similarities and why are both of them about taboo subjects and vulnerable audiences. Okay, so about the first one. This is a project called oh, sorry, you can't see it for some reason. What's happening? Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
I told you, technology is tricky. Okay, now
there we go. Great. So, so this is a European project. It's called Anatoma. This is a funding program that only funds the research and development of technology that addresses older adults' needs. So addresses the aging of the population. And we've been working with this population at Fraunhofer ICOS for a very long time. We are a center of digital technology, and this has been for many years one of our main audiences. And we have this cohort of collaborators and volunteers who participate in many of our research activities. And throughout the years and many informal interactions with them, we understood that sexuality and intimacy were really very important subjects that were not addressed And so we were looking at products and we were looking at research projects. There was nothing to meet the needs that we understood that there were among the community. And so we designed our own project. And so we partnered with with companies who can deliver a product in the end. We partnered with a group of research and development in human sexuality at the University of Porto, and with some hospitals. And we are building this project. And what it hopes to do is to adapt traditional face-to-face sexual health promotion programs. So these are like, you can think about them as courses or self-help courses that are built by sexologists, but usually face-to-face. And we want to adapt them to deliver them through mobile devices, because access to these types of consultations was a great barrier for people to get this kind of support. And so we thought that perhaps because these are ubiquitous and intimate personal objects, they could be a good vehicle for this. And so we thought about tailoring these programs to older adults, but also extreme users in the sense of what is used in inclusive design. So we are also including people with chronic diseases. In our case, we are including people with colorectal cancer who go through significant, abrupt, violent changes to their bodies, and that affect their intimacy and sexuality. Okay, so to do this, we envisioned a scenario that I will try to read to you. So Claire is out on a Saturday morning at the market when her phone vibrates with a notification. It says, "You're being teased by Martin." She smiles, pays for the fruit, and heads home. Martin and Claire met when she was training to become a chef in Amsterdam. He was a lecturer in political affairs, and they fell in love instantly. After a life of traveling the world, witnessing the 60s and the 70s sexual revolution, and growing 3 children who now have their own families, they're in love as ever, and now they can date again. Martin's stroke almost got in the way at first. While he was able to recover most functions, their sexual and intimate life was affected, and they felt that this was affecting their well-being and relationship satisfaction. First, they tried looking online for information, but there were too many conflicting views until one day, on the way to the market, Claire saw an enigmatic ad for a new app called Anatoma for sexual health promotion. She was intrigued by it. She did an online search. It seemed that it was based on scientific evidence. And so she downloaded, and Martin as well. And they also had contacts of psychologists through the app if they wanted a more personalized support. And an intervention like this would only last 5 weeks, so they decided to give it a try and immediately started learning about sex-related myths, anatomy, sexual health, and different ways of exploring and promoting it. Despite being a well-educated couple, they were astonished at how much they had to learn about their own bodies. They were surprised by rich graphics and engaging user experience, and how fun it was to interact with their partner's phone as well, almost like a game. Easy ways also to register their thoughts on their homework assignments and visualizations of their progress that kept them motivated to carry on. This was 1 year ago, but they still can't bring themselves to delete the app because the teasing continues. So this is our vision for what we the most of it. Okay, so how,
Pode.
let's see.
You're having a lot.
Okay, so I gave you the vision that we as a team got to, and we thought, okay, so how to design it. And in the beginning, so we needed to talk, we were dealing with chronic diseases with vulnerable audiences, and we needed, of course, ethical clearance to do our research. But it really took a long time, and these were COVID times. And so we started thinking about how could we challenge our own preconceptions, even if we don't have any user research yet to think about users. And so we decided to create provocative archetypes instead of personas. And we based these archetypes on, or the properties of these archetypes, on something called the gender-bread person. That is a tool online that helps people understand that there is a spectrum in gender identity, a spectrum in gender expression, in biological sex. And so we created these archetypes that we could move for couples. We could move the position of the couples in the different in the different lines so that we can get different combinations and then decide with the team, whenever we were in co-creation workshops inside a consortium, whether what we were thinking could fit to these very different combinations. So this is the way that we tried to go around it. And we made it provocative by calling them provocative names and challenging our own preconceptions. We did this for couples, but also for individual users, because it's very important to think that sexuality is not something that only relates to couples. It has to do with us as individuals as well. And so we also did archetypes for individuals. You also need to think that among older adults, there are many people who are widowers, who never married, and we need to address the needs of these people as well. So finally, we got clearance and we got an opportunity to do an online questionnaire in the Netherlands with a partner. And we were very afraid of not having any response because, you know, we're talking about older adults. So this is a taboo, right? So we won't get any answers, what we'll do. And then we got over 1,000 responses to our questionnaire. It was a pretty long questionnaire and people were really candid about what they told us. This was surprise number one. And designers learning not to be prejudiced was lesson number two. And the third thing that we learned was that men were really interested in giving their opinion, which is also something that we weren't expecting. And throughout our research process, men were much more engaged with our research, much more participative than women. This was also a surprise. And men are also more open to using this kind of resource generally than women. So average age here was 74, and people were often sexually active, and a quarter of them experienced some kind of disability through impairments or like from a disease or through taking medication.
Can I make a question?
Yes.
What's your universe?
It's
geographically speaking.
Oh, in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Yes, these are all Dutch older adults.
Okay.
Oh, and also another interesting detail is that this organization we are working with, they sent a questionnaire to their associates. They're a senior organization.
Okay.
But they're a Catholic senior organization, and we still got these
but Dutch.
Yes,
okay.
Dutch. And then over half of the respondents told us that they looked up health information online, and part of it related to sexuality and intimacy, but they see that the internet is not perceived, they think that the internet is not really safe. And actually, when you search for sexuality and intimacy, then you go all over the place, right? So it's not, so they really value finding reliable sexual health information, being able to reach a specialist. Also, what we understood from, we had some open-ended questions, and we understood that people are really seeking information, they're seeking advice, and in some cases they just want someone to listen to them, because at this later stage in age, no one has talked to them about this. So then we wanted to see, okay, so what would people expect from this program? And a lot of the program is about content. So for designers, it's really important, written and visual content. So what is the tone of this content? And what can make this program be trustworthy? Because it will still be delivered through the internet and through an impersonal device. And what kinds of barriers and facilitators are there to follow the program? And so we built co-design workshops. We designed them here, and they were conducted in the Netherlands with our partner. And this is what we got. So we built all materials resembling a smartphone, so that people really also at all times understood that we were talking about something that would be shown in a smartphone. And we asked them, okay, so if you had this kind of program, would you like to be guided by a psychologist, like every week you have a consultation, or blended, like it's 50-50, or self-guided, like you do it in your own way, in your own terms, and you find your path and find what interests you. And people prefer this self-guided option. We also wanted to probe into trustworthiness and how what we present on the screen based on the literature, whether these simple things would influence trustworthiness. So in this case, what we probed was having the labels of the buttons hidden or in plain sight. And what we got from here is that people don't really find this more trustworthy because it's the information. They like this one better because it's cleaner. But they also took the opportunity just with this small text to tell us that this is too complicated. So too many complicated words. So we based on just a small text, we knew that we had to rearrange all the text in the app so that people could really relate to it and understand it. And then about the tone of voice. This is something that we found on the Nielsen Norman group, something that they did for web design, probing on the tone of voice. And they found these dimensions. The tone of voice could be serious, or it could be funny, formal, casual, respectful, irreverent, matter of fact, or enthusiastic. And they did this for, as I said, for web design, but we tried to adapt it to our own content. And so we used the same content based on their rules. We tweaked a little bit the way that we presented our text. Okay, so this is like more matter of fact and more serious text. You have no text to introduce it. And then here you have a more irreverent tone, like ready to spice up your sex life and more enthusiastic. So we did different combinations, okay? And the combination that we got to that people preferred was something that was serious, but casual, respectful, and matter of fact. So not enthusiastic. Do not promise something that you might not deliver, but with a wink to humor. So humor eases things in these kinds of taboo subjects. And actually, this was the combination that Nielsen Norman Group found that people preferred for healthcare in general. And later, we also, with another study, we also had the same combination for a healthcare chatbot at Fraunhofer. So we did the questionnaire, and then we did this workshop that I told you about. And then, because we only had 6 older adults, we built an online questionnaire with these materials, these smartphone-like materials, and we asked people to tell us just what they preferred. And we got the same answers as in the workshop. So self-guided, the tone of voice and everything. And then we got clearance from the ethics committees, and then we were doing workshops in the Netherlands and Portugal and all over. Okay, and then we were thinking about if you have a couple and each person has their own smartphone, can we use interaction properties of the smartphone to make this somehow more interesting? But as we explore, then I can show it, I don't have time today, but as we explore different scenarios of doing this, like exercises that couples have to do usually for homework that sexologists give them, we thought actually this smartphone feels like a third wheel in the relationship. It's an agent. It doesn't feel very good. So we started thinking about this agent, this third party in a relationship. And as we were doing all of this work to understand the features of the design, we understood we're not so much looking for design patterns as we are looking for rules of etiquette for this agent. How should this app, this element, behave in the relationship and foster this relationship? And how can it also go around things like stigmas? So you see here, these are some of the rules that we came up with to follow in our design. So this can be very embarrassing. So if you're looking at sexology related content, like especially in the part of anatomy, and if you're doing it like in the subway and all of a sudden you have large genitalia on your screen, then it could be really a problem. So we were thinking, okay, so there are situations where this app needs to be light and discreet, and not only in these public situations, but also in couple exercises, because it doesn't want to be very conspicuous. But when you're learning, it should be, and when you're alone, it should be bold. It should appeal to your senses. It should engage you in this experience, because it is a lot of content. So these 8 weeks of content reading through a smartphone, it's quite a lot. Then taking advantage, as I said, from the boldness part, taking advantage of the logo that we had. I don't know if you noticed it in the beginning, but doing these different combinations and surprising people with these aesthetic combinations. And also taking advantage of serendipity. So not just prescribe stuff, but take advantage of unexpected things, or like, for instance, if you and your partner are together in the place where you first met, maybe something like this can show up and give you a suggestion to do an exercise together. So taking advantage of geolocation. So yes.
Ask another
Yes.
question. So both the couple has both of them the app in their phone,
Yes.
and it's geolocated.
An example. It's not yet implemented,
Okay,
but
but
yes.
you're
Yes.
considering it so
Yes.
that the app knows when they are both together,
Yes.
and it interacts with the couple when they are together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Pippi.
Yes.
But not
The
in
third wheel.
distance, not
Yes.
when they are distant, the couple.
Also when they are distant. So we have a set of hints and suggestions that take advantage of being together or being locked. So for instance, if you are very far away,
Yes.
you can have the hint of building an erotic story together, that you write the first part and your partner receives it and complements it, and you build a narrative together.
Going back, you have different scenarios. Could it be like a marital counselor when you have problems within your relationship, or is just something to have
No,
fun?
it's not.
Or
So
is
that would
just-
be
Or is just oriented for people that are impaired by something in their life that
Yeah.
really.
so our outcome is greater awareness of one's sexuality and intimacy. So that would be marital counseling would be an intervention.
Okay, but,
Yeah.
okay, but marital counseling was what I'm trying to understand is that you are designing this for people that have an impact in their love life or intimacy life because of, you said health issues or whatever, or is just people that want to get connected together
It's
and
just
are feeling
whoever.
drifting apart?
Whomever. Yes,
Okay, it's
yes.
not only health related.
No.
Okay.
No. We're using health as an extreme scenario.
Okay.
You
Like
see.
inclusive scenarios. So if you
Exactly.
design for them,
Exactly.
you
Like
can
extreme users.
Okay. So it's just one.
Yes. Okay. And then the appropriateness. So we did, as I told you, the part of genitalia is a problem, and also depends a lot on the culture. And so we were probing on. Okay, so we did many illustrations, going through the more figurative to the more abstract, and all the places in between that I'm not showing here. And from the more figurative or more abstract to metaphorical images that you see a lot in ads publicity, right? And so we were trying to understand, of course, for pedagogical reasons, you need figurative images, but then you can change depth, you can change patterns, you can change textures, you can change context. And we were probing into that to see what people would find appropriate. And these were exploring more like app illustrations. So once you get into the app, not exactly for pedagogical reasons, but what would people prefer? And so, yeah, I got this here. So what happened was people said, this is great in a museum. I don't want anything to do. This is strange. I don't know this. And this one, this is too much. I can't deal with this. This is, you need to do something about it. This is too much. So, okay, so what can we do? So for starters, take off the hair. Take off all the hair. We can't deal with that. Okay, without the hair, what about now? No, you need to, I don't know, maybe crop it. I don't know. So inner thighs, that's a problem. Okay, so we take out the inner thighs. No, you still have the buttocks, so that's too much context. I can't deal with that. So this, which in a way also becomes quite abstract, right? This is what people can deal with. Okay, and then you start reading about it and representations of, in this case, of vulvas in the literature, and you also see that this is maybe as designers we shouldn't just meet what people tell us that they're comfortable with, but maybe we should find something in between, you see, because otherwise we are just enforcing
Stereotypes.
Exactly. So this has been an interesting discussion that we've been having, just I don't know how many illustrations of vulvas we have right now, but it has been really,
What
really
has been
interesting. Yes.
the gender response on this kind of issues?
Yes. So what we got, this is another issue, is that women are telling us, we also have, of course, male illustrations. Women are telling us that they find this to be too exposed. So you see, in a male representation, you usually have this plane, right? This angle.
Yeah.
For a woman, you need to have this like contrapicado, I don't know how to say it. But they're telling us we look exposed. We don't want that. And actually, for some medical personnel at the oncology hospital told us this really invites penetration, and we have many patients who are no longer allowed to have sexual relationships with penetration intercourse. So this is actually a problem to enforce this. So, but at the same time, you want to show then through the application, you learn about the different names of stuff and right. So for pedagogical reasons, we need that. So this is an issue. We have a gender response there, and we also have a gender we did a workshop with a group from the LGBTQ community, and what we saw there was that this group was much more open to talking in detail about the images. They weren't really shocked about the images, male or female. So we got this difference. Yeah. But in terms of being open and being uncomfortable with this woman issue in the Netherlands and in Portugal, it was the same. Okay, women are really uncomfortable about this. Okay, so this, I think it's half my time. Okay, I'm on time. So this is a topic on human sexuality and intimacy, which is clearly a taboo, but it's also challenged what we as designers thought that we would get. So we learned a lot from people of being really candid, telling us everything, being really open to participating in our research studies in person during COVID. So we learned about different ways of designing stuff and getting people to speak, but they also surprised us in many ways. So we had to do this reflection that really we are very prejudiced when it comes to thinking about what users will or will not do. And even in focus groups, that people just sat there, we told them, would you like to come and for a focus group talk about human sexuality? Yeah, I'll come with my husband. And the moment they sit, they're just waiting to speak. They almost don't wait for us to ask the first question. They're just speaking, especially women, because they don't want other women to go through what they have gone through. Okay. Yeah, and now a completely different thing, apparently, is a project on digital transformation in industry and manufacturing. This is a project that's also ongoing, also in a consortium, but based in Portugal, but with a collaboration with one institute at the MIT. And what we are doing in this project is to try to reconcile 3 dimensions of productivity, ergonomics, and mental health. So when we started looking at work in manufacturing, we understood that there was a lot of digital technology and design involved in measuring productivity, so how much people produce, and improving productivity, right? Making more in less time. Some about ergonomics, preventing musculoskeletal injuries, but virtually none on mental health. And we know that one of the main causes of absenteeism in many professions is actually mental health. I don't know if you know, I don't think that I have those numbers here, but in Portugal, the prevalence of mental health disorders stands at 23%. It's really high. So imagine in these kinds of demanding working scenarios, the likelihood that this percentage is even higher is much higher, right? So we thought maybe we can come up with technology that addresses all of these fields, and we can collect data on all of these and show relations between this. So how, when the employer is asking to increase productivity, how is this affecting ergonomics? How is this affecting mental health? And how is mental health affecting your productivity and so forth? And so we wanted to do work with the operators, right, at the factories. We had one garment factory and one automotive factory. So this is a really challenging environment here. So the taboo here, one of the taboos is that you can't really talk about your work, right? So we as designers need to find ways around, but at the same time, when you do find the data, we need to be very respectful about what we will share, even in terms of aggregated data. So for us, this was a real eye-opener. So these are highly controlled environments. There are lots of limitations to our researcher participant contact, right? So we always have to schedule everything. It's not that we can just schedule a focus group for tomorrow, right? Recruitment is a problem. There are safety issues. There are some areas of the factory that you cannot go into or cannot bring certain equipment, all kinds of issues. There are times when the factories have peaks in deliveries or productivity, and we cannot come. So, or downtimes where everyone's at home. So this is really a mess. So what we did was, whenever we had time, we just went all in to the shop floor. We spent there in the beginning, just spent there 4 weeks, and then occasionally we would come back. So we were measuring operators' activity in the beginning to we are designing some algorithms to calculate ergonomic risk. So ergonomic risk tools to augment ergonomists' assessments, and we are working with ergonomists for this. We have these bracelets for using these sensors to monitor productivity cycles, and then we did observations, we did a diary study, we did interviews, speculative design scenarios, with the workers. So I will tell you about this garment factory. So this is a high-end garment factory with around a little less than 300 workers, okay? And what happens in the garment factory is that the process is interdependent. So you cut the fabric, then the fabric comes here to pre-assembly, then it goes to final assembly, then it goes to the finishing, right? And then to quality control. So the work of these ladies here is almost all women. The work of these ladies is dependent on the work of these ladies, okay? So it's not like if the thing comes wrong to you that you can fix it. It's not really that. So mentally, this is an issue dealing with that, because then the things don't fit and gets to quality control and it's your fault. So this is really important stuff. And then, so from here, these numbers mean the people who, a smaller group of operators who went through all the stages with us and are still with us after a couple of years. So sort of a lead user group that we have, okay? This is high end, so this is like things that Cristiano Ronaldo wears, okay? And we learned that the fabric type and the fabric pattern, so they are not doing the same thing all the time. So the work orders vary, and this has a strong influence on how much they produce, how much pain they have, and how well they feel mentally. Okay, so we started doing, for mental health, one important thing is to be aware of your feelings and to self-report. Okay, so we are working also in the consortium, we have a group of psychologists, and they tell us, you need to do this kind of reporting, and ideally you need to do it in real time. Okay, but this is a highly controlled environment where you have all seconds what you need to do. This is prescribed. So how can we fit this activity? But before creating technology for that, we just thought, okay, but first we need to understand whether people are aware of their feelings, whether they can report those in some way, and whether this is meaningful to them, whether they would like to do this. And so we did that with a diary study, asking them before the shift, after the shift, and at the end of the day, so not coinciding really with the work times, to fill this diary, like, did you feel anxious or relaxed, in a bad humor, good humor? Did you take medication? Things like that. And then they did this for 2 weeks while we were doing the observations, and then we delivered the visualizations individually to each of them. I will talk about that in a moment. And we also did interviews, not only to the operators, but also to all the hierarchy until to the administrations. We had 30 people, did free observation of them, and then systematic observation, which we identified some relevant categories. So this is the context. So pictures of where whatever we would design would need to fit. Okay, and you can see that people personalize many of so this has the name of the line manager here. So each sector has a person who is responsible for it, so a line manager. And not only do I have my own machine, and this is really important to me, this is an intimate relationship that I have, and you cannot interfere with that. But also the line managers who have like 20 or 30 machines, they write their names on it. They say, these are my machines from my sector. So this is a point of tension and friction with administration, because administration wants operators to be able to work in many machines. So now go there. And for them, this is a problem. This actually is disgusting for someone to work in someone else's machine. So this is really, really a problem. And they cannot use smartphones or whatever. Okay, so then we gave them back the visualizations, as I said, in another round of individual interviews. The diary visualizations, we did very simple bar graph visualizations, and we probed with people during the interview whether these visualizations were meaningful, whether people would see themselves in these data, whether they recognize themselves, and whether this was meaningful to them. And from this, we got the idea that people were aware of how they felt. They were able to note down how they felt. When they saw this, they learned about themselves. They saw themselves, they recognized themselves, and they also learned something about themselves. So they said, yeah, we are totally open to continue doing this. This is useful. Okay. So what we did then, okay, so if we have this in aggregated data, then how can it be used? So of course we won't show these data because these are very sensitive to other people, right? To the administration in particular. But if they have access to aggregated data, then they can do something about your working conditions. And they say, okay, so then we did a blueprint of the factory and we probed this. Okay, so let's see, imagine that there is this screen and you can see this week, this sector was high in pressure, this was high on stress. And they said, this is fine, the administration can see this, but the other sectors, each sector cannot see what the other sector has. So this was lots of things that we were completely out of. So this is, there are things here that are taboo, again, to return to the subject. And we as researchers need to learn what are, in this subculture, what is a taboo, so that we can be respectful of that. And then finally, going around taboos, you see this image here. This is a set of objects that I collected after our interviews and our observations. We really wanted to see who people feared, who they respected. So this was important for data sharing in the end. But they couldn't really name the names. And so we understood from the observations that many objects have implicit meanings. So if you have a plain fabric, it means that the work will flow. It's good. It's good. It's a good feeling. If you have a striped fabric, then when you're doing the seams, you need to meet the stripes, okay? So, and the fault tolerance is below 1 millimeter. So this is a little bit stressful, okay? And when you have checkers, this is a nightmare, okay? So in productivity, when you have plain fabric, then you can imagine that you can do 70 pieces per hour. If you have checkers, it goes down to 30, okay? So I'm doing plain and I'm seeing in the cut that the next work order is checkers. I'm already tense for next week, okay? So what we did was collect all these objects that we understood had meanings. And in an externalization exercise, we asked them, okay, let me see if I have an image here. Okay, think about operators, line managers, the production management, so those in charge of the shop floor and the direction, and associate each of these categories to one object. And they did that. And after they did this association, we would ask, why did you do this association? And then we asked, okay, so then we were already talking, imagine that you said operators and checkers. Okay, and at the end, I would say, okay, what does this checkers fabric need to know that they currently don't know? What is the information that this fabric is lacking? And all of a sudden, people were in this different zone where they were talking to us about stuff, and we could really understand better the relationships without naming names. And they got, so this is how it went. So they associated this, and there was one case where the person told us, "I see where you're getting, so give me the paper." And so she was giving us, well, so the mechanics, the whatever, you know, so she was just giving us categories of professions, and also giving us extra objects like glasses that I was drawing very quickly so as to meet her connections. And so she really felt liberated to talk about. So I'm talking about it, but I'm really not really talking about it. So it worked very well for us. And in the end, we did, as researchers that we are, of course, we did a thematic analysis based on Brown and Clark, the standard, right, on all of these materials, interviews, observations, pictures, drawings that we had, everything. And this was done by the team at Fraunhofer. We are all designers, design researchers, and the team in psychology from the University of Porto. And then we got some themes that I will be telling you about. And another interesting thing that I don't think I will have time to explain now, but we understood that the themes were not only informing the design itself, what we should design, but also what we should be measuring and how we should engage with the users. So this was quite interesting. We're trying to write a paper about this, but it's taking a long time. So yeah, so about the themes that we got, I'll always be presenting the themes here with some of the categories and some of the coding here. Okay, so one of the first themes is seeking perfection. And this perfection has different representations if it is to the operator, to the company, or to the client. Okay, so here is an operator telling us, what makes me suffer the most is really the job coming back with effects. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's really bad. It's bad internally because there's no one pestering us, not at all, but internally it's really bad. It's feeling we're not being able to. So it's not that our people saying you did it wrong. No, just seeing the pieces coming back and you having to do it all over again. This is terrible. This is categorized by this person who works in this environment as the worst thing. Okay, people can be shouting at it. This is the worst. So they want to be perfect. Okay, and they know what perfect means to them, which is something, to the company, which is something else, and to the client, which is something completely different. And they can also associate clients to standards. Okay, even though they're not really told, they see. Okay, so I cannot name the brands, but okay, so I see this kind of brand coming, so I know what will come back. I know what will go forward. Okay, so this is really interesting. And when we design things, we need to take into account how we can interfere with this perfection, or how we can convey this idea of perfection also in what we give them. Respecting and obeying time is also something interesting. So they have time at different scales, we understood. So they have, this is a business that runs on cost per minute, right? So this is what they sell. So your productivity is measured every hour, how many pieces you produce every hour. So this is a different scale from minute to the hour, and then to a whole lifetime. So here is one quote. Okay, when she was starting the work. So I thought that work was too important. That work specifically was too important for a person like myself who knew nothing about it, right? So this is when she was placed in a certain. When she talks about work is a certain operation that she was doing. Actually, I started doing it and it went well, and the chief gave me a lot of support, told me to take it easy, that we'll make it. I remember, I'm sorry about the typo, going home and crying a lot because I didn't like the work, but my family told me to take it easy, that all would turn out well, and today this is the work that I love doing the most. So we have many sentences like this of the importance that you need to give time, actually, to learn to do something, to learn to like something. And this is entrenched in the culture. And what you can see also here is that seniority is very much respected. So people who are more senior, they don't stay under or silent. You know, they speak up and they speak up for the others as well, because at this time, it's very difficult to find seamstresses who work at this level. So they have some power, and they use it, right? So just being there for a long time. Actually, there are these vests that people have, right? So these work vests, and you see that the models have changed a little bit throughout the years. So the first models had a little bit of blue, and you see that the older workers still use, because they are renovated every 2 years or so, and now they no longer have this blue, but the older workers still use these older vests to show that they're there from the beginning. Okay, so they don't have to tell it; they just need to walk around, and people will know that they're there for 20 years or so. Okay. So this material culture is really, really very important. It expresses itself in many ways. And then the relation to artifacts, as I told you, with the relationship with the machine, it's really intense relationship. And also the relationship with the materials and the fabrics. So one thing that you learn if you know something about sewing is that the material is always right. And so you need, whatever the seniority you have, you need to bend towards, you need to respect the material as well. So this is a really great part of it. And something that we learned in terms of the co-design process, something that we learned from this was that whenever we do any activity that I'm not showing here, but whenever we do any new activity, we take really great care of framing everything, putting everything really nice and clean so that people are proud of using it and bringing it home. Because this is a culture, this is a material, the importance of this material culture. And they told us about it. It's so nice, the things that you bring us, it's really pleasurable. So we use that in our favor as well as researchers. And then acknowledging this subculture. Okay, so we need to know how to behave, but also for the data, and for the data that we will be showing, this is a more critical part. We have many discussions on ethical issues, right? On what to do with these data. We have to respect this culture, as I told you, on who should see what data. Okay, so this subculture implies some sort of relationship with the line manager. So the line manager can be really hard on them, and they appreciate. They said, "Well, I cried a lot, but I learned a lot with her as well, and today I'm grateful," which for us is can be a little bit strange. But at the same time, they also have some kind of, sometimes they represent this maternal figure. And so even in terms of the research process, whenever we need to recruit someone, we need to go down to the line. We will talk to the management, of course, to help us with the recruitment. And we don't need to go through the line manager. But we know that informally, it's good that you talk to the line manager and ask, okay, do you mind if we go around and you tell your name? So you need to do this kind of work. So there is a lot of work around that. It's not really collecting data, but that will make your data much better, and that will create this rapport. Okay, and just to finalize, because I'm really already on my schedule, just to show you some images of what we are building now. So to collect data in real time about what people are feeling, we designed this device, this self-report device, that people can use in different ways, so they can put it in their pocket, so hidden or in plain sight, depends on how you want to use it. We just published a paper about an experiment that we did, a longitudinal experiment on the factory. And so with each button, you can report some dimension of well-being. One is feeling support. This is a positive one, feeling supported by colleagues or by the line manager. This is a protective factor for your health. And two negative ones, feeling pressured, like feeling stressed, or internally pressured, or from the outside, like for the client, I know this client feels under pressure, or feeling pain. And all of these dimensions, of course, came from user research, and were validated with the operators who told us these are really, we cannot have many because we need to collect in real time, but we have really interesting results. And we then did visualizations again individually with each participant. We showed them the visualizations of their experience, and they got these epiphanies sometimes. Oh, I never noticed that I would hit that button ever at the same time of the day. This makes me think, this makes me wonder. So this is exactly what we want to do with it. But then how can you make it work in this very difficult environment. So this is the next stage. We're also collecting data on exposure to risks in the environment, like noise or temperature and so forth. And we are developing these inertial sensors that are the same for ergonomics. This is in the automotive factory for ergonomics and for productivity that you can use in different places. And we are working, of course, on the visualizations. And we will have, this is still, all of this is work in progress. But what we want to do is to give each person their own data, because it's their data, so they have to see it. And we want to facilitate the ways that you can make visual relationships between the endpoints, right? So that you can see, even if you don't know about statistics, but visually you can recognize if they're all following the same timeline, that you can recognize that there is a relationship between some stress in your right arm or whatever, and pressure points that you marked, or some condition in the environment. So these are all cards that you can move around so that you can make these connections, still to be tested. And this is responsive, so you have also a mobile version. And in this mobile version, we are also taking advantage of it to make monthly questionnaires to digitalize job quality, which is something, a dimension of job, measure of job quality, which is something that interests the psychology group. So, thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for this amazing presentation. I'm really enthusiastic about it. So let's open the Q&A session to the people in the room and also in the virtual room. So, who wants to intervene, please?
Well, I can start. I'm just curious about the second project. How did you approach to the factory? Did they come to you, or did you go to them? Because like it's very challenging, and I'm not sure people want to find out their like negative parts, let me say. So,
So the automotive factory is Auto Europa, and we've been working with them for a very long time for ergonomics. So we have the ergonomist there has been working with us for a very long time, and so ergonomics is already a big part of it's important in the factory, right? So if we can come up with tools to improve that assessment, then that's great. And also factories are seeing that it's increasingly difficult to hire people or to retain people because they get injured or they go on sick leave for mental purposes. So they are starting to understand that they need to do something about it. And so they need to do these compromises. So some data might come out, but we need to do something about it. Otherwise, we don't have people to work with. For the self-report, then the mental part, that's the most tricky. So what we did was we can measure already productivity and relate that to ergonomic risk. Wouldn't it be great if we could, if we could also go into this mental health issue? Don't you have these absenteeism? Yeah, we do. Well, okay. So we're doing it very slowly. It's not so easy as with the others. But we still got very lucky with the factories but we kind of lured them through ergonomics. And then we're doing the self-report part for the mental health on top of this.
okay.
But it's really tricky, even for so for ergonomics, it's we can show the data, so we can see, okay, so you saw that we instrumented this person with all of these sensors, and we got our algorithm can calculate this kind of ergonomic risk for this segment, for that segment. Okay, I said, okay, this is good, and the person is happy for these data to be shared. For mental health, it's quite a completely different story. And for the experiment that we did, we only had 8 participants to test the device in naturalistic environments. And we wrote in the informed consent that we would not be analyzing the data, that would just show visualizations, and we wouldn't show the data to anyone, not even the factory. And the factory, they accepted it, but they weren't really happy about it. We also have to work with them quite a lot, in baby steps. so that we can do.
these kind of like data could be also used like for legal reasons. No, if they want to sue the company, you know, they can just say, okay, my
Exactly.
mental health is crashed here. And,
Exactly. Even this is something that we are still discussing. Actually, we're not equipped to discuss the full implications of this, and so we've been trying to find people who help us out. Recently, we had a postdoc who is specialist in cybersecurity and ethics, and he was spending some time with us and thinking about this project and what we could do in order to, from the technological side and also from the legal side, to protect the workers. But we're still not very sure how to do it. Even if we treat it as medical data, like today it's used, then it also has some issues because we know that operators, they tell us in the interviews that even to the medical doctors, they're not telling the whole truth because they fear the consequences. So we don't have a solution. So this is also where I like to talk about this project, because any ideas that you have would be welcome to discussing.
it's very hard.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just ask you to stop sharing screen so
Yes.
they can see you better? Okay, great. Fantastic. Other questions? Yes.
Yes.
Darren.
Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. I would like to talk a little bit about the first project. Very interesting. I think the objective is very cool and very have an urgency of the solution. I believe that now we tend to translate many services with touch points that are often reported on the as mobile devices or on. But what do you think about going beyond the mobile, having a different component of the service that could go, I don't know, from the environment to augmented reality? Because I think a complex problem has to be addressed with complex solutions. I don't know, with the multi-channels.
Yes. I'm a slow thinker. I'm sorry. I think so. Let me see if I can answer. So when we first did a search to see what kind of products or services
Yes.
there were around this, and we saw that there was not a lot of stuff. And we also saw that the people who know about this, the sexologists, they resist a lot to digital technology. There is a whole lot of literature on digital mental health and the resistance that the therapists have to using these kinds of tools, which is a little bit different now because of COVID, but for the better. But well, not for, it depends on how you see it, but in terms of prevalence of youth. And so many of the things that they currently do, even the exercises that they give to participants to do, this is pen and paper. Okay, so take these leaflets home. Okay, so I understand what you're saying, and this would be interesting in terms of at this stage in terms of speculative design. We also looked at how the interplay of something like this could be with sex toys or things like that. But since there was nothing, we could find nothing. We thought we need to do baby steps for this. So what we're doing is really coming up with this first translation into digital. Let's see how the psychologists deal with it, how the users deal with it. We're doing, yes, we're doing at the end. I didn't tell you about it, but we're doing a randomized control trial of everything as it should be, so that we can get important and valid evidence on such an implementation. Because it will be the first time. You see, we have no reference whatsoever, so we are completely in the dark. And so this is
I think it's smart to start with something that is feasible in the first month.
And also we have also an important thing is that we have a partner in the project. They're called InstaHelp. They're in Austria. And they are a web platform that connects psychologists with patients. And they were seeing that they have different stuff. So when you log into the platform, you do a registration and you say what kinds of issues you're interested in. And one of the topics, the large topics, is relationships. And they saw that this topic is increasing. And part of it has to do with sexuality, not all of it, but some of it has to do with sexuality. So if they can have an easy way to implement new content on their platform, so as if we find evidence that it somehow works, in terms of health outcomes, that they can implement this and give this as a tool for their psychologists, then our project would go straight to the market. And this for us would be very good because then it will open up all new avenues for future research. I hope that I answered the question.
Thank you so much.
Other questions?
Yeah, may
Yes.
I? Actually, I have a concern regarding respecting to the taboo. I'm just want to ask, because of the taboo, maybe we cannot. We have to be like always worried about breaking it, and what's the limitation? When we can, I can understand for the project to just reach that some project we should respect, but it's always doing that. It's like it's it's like the wall in front of you and you cannot go away. It's like,
Could you rephrase the
Well,
question?
maybe I got it somehow. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm just
I'm just asking again regarding taboo. It's in my point of view, it's some that's you say you have to just respect to the taboo. Did you got that? Ila?
Yeah, not always. So when I think I got your question. So when should we force and break the glass, right? So not as to perpetuate prejudices, for instance, right? So I try to address this a little bit on the part of the illustrations, right? So and on the genitalia illustrations. So we got all of this information of what people are comfortable with, but we also know that what they are comfortable with is inherited by patriarchal society, right? So so there's one force pushing in one direction and the other pushing in the other direction, and we were really following what were people's learned behaviors and what they felt taboo or was embarrassing. But at a certain point, we understood that if we do that, as I showed you in that image, if we really meet what people are comfortable with, then we are just enforcing those taboos and those prejudices. So we as designers maybe could force them a little bit to deal with some things that are not really comfortable for them, so as to enforce this. Yeah, but this is also very tricky. Also, gender-wise, we were just translating the content to Portuguese, and it's very difficult to make inclusive language and force these kinds of things, or be sure where you are exactly. Where,
Yeah.
if you're forcing it too much, that people will leave.
Yes.
You know. But so what we got, we translated the first part of this is the psychologist just wrote it in a Word document, all the content, all the modules, and there are 5 modules, and I translated the first one just these days. And I got to the end and said, we need a focus. We need to show these to people and get their feedback on what they get from this, whether they are uncomfortable, or too uncomfortable, or just a little. If they are just a little, then that's fine. If they are too much and they want to, yes. Again, there is no guidance on how to do this. So we feel somehow responsible to force some taboos to break, but on the other hand, we know that if we force the line too much, then people will not use it, and so we won't have the outcomes on their sexual health that we want. You see?
Thanks so much.
I agree. I agree with that.
I don't know if it's a way to do it, but like maybe in the very beginning, are you going to make it more personalized? So if it's a different culture, maybe you would include, and maybe they can like have access to some specific contents after a while, not in the beginning.
Yes.
See, I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're doing that.
Okay.
Yes. And
So that's
also
why
using things like, even for the imagery, explicit imagery, using things like you already have patterns that you hide the image and say, watch out, once you touch this button, like a huge penis will show. So if you're in public,
So are you sure to?
Exactly. So but we're also doing things like that, and tailoring. We discussed a lot about, well, this is for another session, we discussed a lot about the difference between personalization and flexibility, because we didn't want to personalize it a lot, because we think that there are some issues with that. We wanted to give flexibility, but there was a huge discussion with the design team and the whole consortium where we should.
Did you, I don't know, maybe you already thought about it, but like, is there a way to introduce like gamification approach somehow, or?
We used gamification a lot in Fraunhofer and other health-related projects, but we got very disappointed at that. So in building extrinsic motivations, we got very disappointed at that. Maybe we weren't just specialized in building games. So for you to have a really good game, you need to have people who are specialists in creating games, not just anyone who can create games.
Specialist in guiding the games also. Sometimes
There is a whole there's a whole industry of games, like a whole academic community of games, and we don't think that we are at that level. And that might be the answer, or it might be that it really, in some cases, doesn't really. We haven't seen a lot of evidence that works so well.
Well, since it's a taboo, you see, that's why maybe to overcome it, it might work. Maybe I have no idea. Also,
Difficult actually. Yeah, it is.
We have students from this postgraduate. We're talking about the postgraduate course that we collaborated with recently, and it's a postgraduate interaction design, web and games, and the students actually developed games for the couple, and they tested it with younger couples, and it seemed to work somewhat well. At least the game mechanics, they understood it. And they found it funny, but these were usability tests. We don't know if the results sustain.
they might use it once, but okay, then they might
Yeah,
not, but they won't be engaged.
Maybe. No clue.
Okay. Oh, that's why it's research, huh?
Yeah, it seems from your research that we maybe need to work on the basis of this problem. So maybe we don't need to put some tools like gamification or others, because if there is nothing in the research and you don't have bibliography, then it's maybe we need to start from the basis of this problem. Maybe this.
Yeah. There are some usability. So in the first part of this, what do you need to do if you want to raise awareness on these kinds of topics? You need to teach people about the importance of it, about sexual rights. What is sexuality actually? And you need to deconstruct myths. Okay, so sexuality is not penetration. It's different things. Okay, so and then you need to give people lots and lots of terms. So in the beginning, you just expose them.
Yeah, because you think you start with your sexuality with the couple, but you start from yourself. So it's first you, and then with others, with relationships and with other,
Exactly. And then, like a course, to be more complex, to introduce more complex ideas, you need to have these basic
and
terms.
also about illustrations, and it's tricky in my opinion, because if I see something, then maybe I can't recognize my genitalia, and then I can think, oh, it's not good for me to see one picture that is not respecting my genitalia. I don't know. So that's also really hard to put the right. Of course, you need to explain, like in educational, situational, what is a vulva, and all the parts. But then it's also tricky because I cannot recognize
Yourself.
myself in this also.
This is again one of the basics that you do in the first week of these programs with the sexologists, is that you show people the diversity there is. So one of the things that they see is a huge image of all kinds of penises of sizes and shapes and vulvas alike. Okay, so you need to deconstruct these kinds of things. But then, of course, then you see, okay, so I cannot draw your exact body, but you can explore it in your own way. If you know what parts compose it, and then the module guides you to explore those parts. But in order to explore those parts, you need to know the names, and to know the names, especially with people who might have their short-term memory impaired, then these concepts do not sustain because they are new. So even usability wise, you need to find ways that people can always go, okay, so I learned about this concept's here again, but it needs to be highlighted. I can click it and see the definition again every time, because it's all then scientific content for 8 weeks. So there are lots of usability issues in guaranteeing that people retain this information, or recall this, or are able to quickly recover the meaning of those things.
And you said that at the beginning of your presentation, you were surprised about that males were more engaged about this research.
Yes.
But I'm not, because I think that women are kind of, I don't know, not feeling comfortable in speaking about this topic. So maybe I think it's kind of common for me to listen to that males are more engaged with this.
Yeah, what we saw from the literature is that men would find it more difficult to accept that they have problems. Okay. This is the same as in mental health.
They have what? Sorry.
They have problems.
Okay.
If you have problems, then it's more difficult to acknowledge that, because it interferes with masculinity, a lot of imposed ideas, right? In society, like how or what you should be. And so we did this questionnaire, and then when we went to the workshops, we discussed quite a lot. Should we do workshops just with older women, just with older men? No, just let's put everyone. So we discussed that a lot. We put everyone together.
But what was the motivation for designing the app? Was it financial? Was it research study?
It was a research. So it was from this cohort that we have. So we have these older adults who have been working with us for many years, like working volunteers with us for many years, and they were testing all kinds of health-related applications. And then in informal conversations, we noticed that this was a recurrent subject. So that we saw that there was a need, and we saw that there was a need to do research on it. But Fraunhofer, we do more exploratory research, but we do apply research, and one of our missions is to bring the technology then to the market. So we tend to invest in projects or design projects that have a route then to commercialization. Yeah. Yes, we don't do commercialization, but we find the partners who can then do.
Do you have like industry of health partners?
What? Sorry.
Do you plan to have this app in cooperation with industry?
Yeah. So in this consortium, the group in this European project, one of the companies is interested in using it. Well, we have two companies, and both are interested in commercializing it in different ways. Okay. One will just use the content to feed their existing platform for their psychologists, and the other one will commercialize a standalone app.
When did this project start?
It started last year.
Oh, okay, it's been only a year. Okay. Because there was COVID, that's why I was thinking maybe it took like longer, but
no, we started in April, we submitted the protocol to the ethics committee in June, and we got approval in December.
I have a question, Anna. Based on your experience, do you see here space for doctoral research somehow? Could you just give some inputs to our students? Sometimes they struggle to find interesting topics to work on, and so they are just fighting to find those topics. Based on your experience, do you see here there's enough content for doctoral research?
Yes, there is.
Can you just give a few suggestions, so if they are listening to us, they could just take one of them?
If there is someone in design just interested in illustration, there is a lot to do here. So I showed today the genitalia illustration for pedagogical purposes. Psychologists call it psychoeducational purposes. But there's also all of the app illustrations and all of the experience. How do you sustain that experience for 8 weeks? And how do you do that, thinking that the user might not be one, but two people. Okay. This is also an issue in terms of user experience. How do you sustain, even outside of the illustrations part, how do you sustain this user experience? How do you meet the goals of the different partners? So some problem that sexologists usually have is that usually if there is a relationship, a sexual relationship, there is one person who sees that there are problems and suggests finding help, right? And the other person comes along. So this is a problem. The person comes along because this person who comes along is the first to come to leave. And so how can you design the experience so as to motivate or show benefit to this come along? And also when you're doing this program, there are parts that you're doing individually, the parts that you're doing together. Will you share your data or not? And how will you share your data? This will have implications on what you get from the program. Again, if that engagement is sustained, then there's a lot of then we didn't talk about the parts of the psychologists, but they're a huge part of it. So we were talking about like self-help, so something that you can do on your own, but many people need support from the psychologists. How will psychologists give you the support? It's not just giving the resources, it's also getting data from your interaction with this. What is reasonable, what isn't, what is helpful, what isn't. And this is something that is not done with quick usability tests. This is something that you need to study and then eventually do longitudinal tests with this. Culturally, what kinds of differences are there? If you just study, if you just give the app to people in different cultures or different ages or different diseases, that's a PhD right there as well. So there's a lot of work. Please talk to me if you want.
No, definitely. It's nice to know because that sometimes students that they just come up with, many ideas and they might miss a good opportunity. So
even this that I was talking about, just plain usability. Okay, how can you get these concepts to stick? What's the best way to highlight these things to? Because there's a lot of scroll going on with a lot of
and
text.
one thing that I was thinking of is how to trigger interaction on such a topic. So because one thing is I do have an app or an app exists, but how do I engage people on? So how do I trigger their willingness to interact with such a system?
So there are two phases, right? So there, the first phase where you recognize that you need help. This is something that we cannot really act there. But then there's the other phase of sustaining engagement. And what we did was, with some hints that we got, we built many hints for the couples to do together, and we did a quick experiment. We didn't have the app yet, but we got participants and we would share images like through WhatsApp. We do like a quick and dirty test. And so people would get these cards with suggestions of something to do with their partners. And then they could shuffle the card, they could dismiss it, I don't want to do that, or I want to see more. And they would see the back of the card and would give them instructions on what to do. And we just did a pre-test so far with 2 participants, getting this not really through the app, but how they engage with that was really incredible. So for instance, one person would get the message. They didn't know when they were getting the message with the hints. It was completely surprised. So they were actually sending messages to our researcher, leading it. Is there something wrong? This is my number. I want I want the suggestions. Please send them. Yeah, it's all in control. So then they would get them. And we were sending them at different times of the day, and this went for 2 weeks just to probe on their. And they had different reactions. So for instance, one person would get this. Imagine that's lunchtime, and she was at work, and she didn't open it. And she waited until she got home with her partner so that they could see it together. So again, it opened up a whole new way of interacting with the thing that we weren't thinking about. So serendipity, surprising people with nice things that they could do, turns out to be a promising way of doing engagement. If you have content that is well planned and well designed, and also
appropriate for the needs of. So this is an issue of personalization appropriation. You cannot suggest things to people who are not. So you cannot suggest running together if a person cannot run, right? Just to give an example. But
And the question is, for instance, imagine we are using Instagram, no, like multiple times during the day. So how often do you like foresee people are using this application?
we have no clue.
Okay.
So what happens in these interventions? Traditionally, the sexologists will say, so there are goals for this week. For this week, the goals are these: are for you to get this competence or to do these exercises. If you want to meet the goals for the week, then you have to do the module all until the end. Then you can or cannot. It's up to you. Okay. And you know upfront what is it that you will gain when you get to the end. This is how they work. But how many times people, because once you read some content or you did some exercises, you can do them again, you can read it again. But this is something that we still don't know because we haven't tested it in this longitudinal study. This will just happen.
Duolingo, no, like this language application. So you can ask the application to poke you. Okay, every day this hour. Okay, I want. So
Exactly. So this we have in an initial quick survey, and then the settings that you can set.
okay.
How do you see addressing issues like sexual deviations, like sexual addicts, or even the pedophilia or something like that? How do you address these issues?
Yeah. So in the I can only tell you about what we've foreseen inside the research project. So what we did, we have two strategies. One is there are things we have a mechanism to target concerning cases. In this case, people in there identify the participants that will be referred to a professional with the School of Psychology. But then we cannot people who enroll for the randomized control trial, they will have to go through an initial screening.
The screening, yes.
Okay, so to rule out some, well, many conditions.
Yeah.
So it's a limitation, but also something that we need to do, especially now in the beginning. So this is even
Makes sense.
situations of domestic violence. This is something that we discussed a lot, and we have an advisor who is specialist in designing these randomized control trials with internet interventions, and he helped us quite a lot in designing this protocol. This was part of the protocol that went to the ethics committee.
Okay, that makes sense. It's interesting. It's hard topic to address, I think. Yeah.
But it's good that, because it's like, as designers, we cannot work alone. I think you're showing that obviously, in like the multiple projects. So like, it's not only designers, but we need like people from different fields, right? And I think this is a very good project. Well, the project that you have in general, I think you have multiple people involved, not only designers.
Yes.
So, but is it challenging to work with different areas?
I think that as designers, we even from school, we are educated to being open to working with other disciplines. But I still find that it's difficult, especially scientifically, to align vocabulary. So, and even today, we were just reviewing a paper that we want to submit together, myself and a senior researcher, clinical psychologist who is working with me. And we are all the time discussing about terms and how to structure the paper, because she's from a kind of school, I'm from a different kind of school. And we've been working together for years now, and we're still, yes. So, and also for technology, for people who never worked with technology, it's very hard to understand how the process of digital technology development is. Okay, so this is, you need to take into account that this will take a large chunk of your time to get people on the same page.
Yeah, but it could be a focus on our studies, like to, work on the alignment of vocabulary somehow. So understand, because as designers, we are called to work with other workers like engineers or psychologists and so on. So maybe we need to work about vocabulary and words as well.
Yes, even for user research, something that the psychologists, I want to say two things about this. Something that the psychologists who we work with in the factory project do, something really interesting, is that they also do ethnography-like approaches like we do. And once they go into the field, completely different field, they do a glossary of all the terms that they share with the team. This is something that we didn't learn to do, as I was just all over the place. And the second thing is that there's one thing to work with different clients, and another thing to work in research with different academic traditions. Okay,
Yeah.
so the meanings are the words that you use are very precise, and they're the same words. So just to give you an example, in psychology, a study. So in psychology, one of these workshops is a study. Okay, for us, it's a project with different things that we're doing at the same time, or doing the questionnaire, doing the workshops, or it's participatory design, whatever. When you talk about the study, is one set of data collection. Okay, so and also for when working with digital technology, when you start talking to developers and they start telling you about all of these strange things, if you're not familiar with digital technology, and this happens a lot with us with healthcare professionals, it's a mess. They don't know what a server is. They have no idea when they talk about data and communication and something and encryption. They have no idea what we're talking about. But their input is quite crucial.
Yeah.
So we still have a lot of this.
Do you, in order to solve that problem, do you work with ontologies?
With ontologies?
Yeah.
No. No, we just work with ontologies on natural language processing.
You don't then define, okay.
No.
But you work currently with this kind of researchers, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because I would say this, that in social sciences now, the typical first phase of a project is to define an ontology. So you get all the stakeholders together and you agree on an ontology and you publish it and you use it like a manual's normal, whatever. Because one thing is epistemology and you have the knowledge of it. But another thing, as you said, is to get all the stakeholders, as people have different understandings of what, for instance, a project is. You agree first on ontology, and I would say that this will be a time-saving and consuming instrument, because if you are working on these relationships for a long time, then everybody is working from the same page.
Sure.
Yeah,
It makes sense.
yeah.
But how do you? That's interesting. How do you fit into that, the methods part? So for digital technology, usually you work agile. You work in 1 week sprints.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
But you could agile is we sometimes use waterfall or lean Sigma 6, but it all depends on the project that you say. But even then, if you're working in sprints from, we have a Scrum Master or whatever, but I would say that one of the first steps, if it's one-off, then it doesn't matter. But if you're working with these stakeholders and then it's a long-term relationship and you're going to use this for years, I would say that, for economizing time, you would have to create an ontology. And an ontology is like a relational concept where you start defining, this is a table. Okay, what is a table for you? How do you define a table? And then you ask the engineer and you ask the psychologist or whatever, and everyone agrees on what they are looking at. I'm relating this because I used to develop a European project for archaeology, where you get people from IT, you get people from physics, you get people from augmented reality, and the concept of, for instance, an artifact or a shipwreck is different from what we are understanding. So we are forced to sit together and really decompose the objects of our study into languages and defining each and every step. And then, as soon as it is published, not only the subject of our study is much more precise and clear, but everyone will be on the same page. And it's accessible and everyone will go there and you can build on it.
No, I think that's great.
Because you were saying that you were still debating with the psychologists with whom you worked for so many years.
Yes,
This
this will definitely be a solution. My question is, how then can you combine that with different rhythms of works? Okay, so you see,
yeah, I do understand what you say. What you're trying to say is like the same problem you had with the women working in the factory. They have these very tight shifts. How do you fit in?
yes,
But if you don't fit in, then you don't get the study done. So at one time you'll have to decide we need to sacrifice one of these Lean Sigma 6 or whatever project that you're doing or sprints, and we need to sit down and discuss ontology. Because as I said, it's all a question of, is it one-off? If it's one-off, it doesn't matter. It doesn't compensate. But if it's really something that is a long-term relationship, maybe you get to define and you will learn so much, by having a different perspective from everything from the really different stakeholder.
So you also need to. This is a good idea. I was thinking about something a little bit different that we did.
I have some references in it. I can email it to you later on.
Thank you.
They're really nice.
And does that sustain really over time, or do you need a really committed team? Because just to give you an example, in the project with the factories, we were aware that we would be going into a lot of ethical dilemmas along the process. And so we use this framework of inaction ethics that we found published, and we got all the partners to talk about the ethical consequences that they would expect to come for the researchers, for the participants, for the business, dilemmas. And we did all this process, and then we categorized them, and then we got consensus to what was our ethos in the project, the most important values in the project. And that, we did it, it was great. It's in the past. And now you don't have sustained commitments around that, you see. And we've seen this in not only in this is the first project that we did it. This is something that we're struggling with, because what you need to build sort of gets in the way. And I would be interested in understanding these experiences and sustained commitment to these ontologies. Yes, good. I'll be reading about that. Thanks a lot.
Another issue that I was considering is, do you always start with this technology constraint? So it's always part of the project that somehow it should go through technology-based solution. So you never consider looking into the problem without putting technology in the equation?
Yes. So this is a problem that we have. Because we are an organization that only builds digital technology, this is a problem. What has happened, actually with this project is happening, with the sexuality project. We have some part that, yes, generally we go to digital technology. Like in this case of sexuality, we saw, okay, we were thinking about this might be an issue. Well, there might be an opportunity here for ubiquitous technology. Let's explore it with a project. So it kind of made sense at the time, at least, and still makes. But there is some parts of exercises that you need to do and reflection, and then you need to note down those reflections in some way. And this is something that we have been debating. Maybe the smartphone isn't the best way for you to register those things, not only because of difficulties in writing, but also because you don't really relate in the same way to your field. And so we've been thinking about adding pen and paper to this experience for the part of having these registries that you can then show to the psychologists if you want, or just go back to them in your own handwriting. But for some people, they say they don't really want it because it's difficult for them to write anyway. So we have different views in usability tests. You have people who would prefer that, people who would prefer to write because they say that it will force them to train because they don't write so much, so it will force them to see the words and build the words. And some say it's really difficult, so I just prefer to dictate. So this is another way of flexibility. But it has happened also in projects with clients that they ask us something that is to be solved with digital technology, and then we see that digital technology is not the answer, or at least not the answer to the full problem. And then you need to say, well,
Partially.
we think, yeah, we think we can solve this much, but that much is a different problem. So you might as well not pay us to do that because it won't solve the problem.
Because
It has happened. yes.
Eventually, it might even limit the creativity of the project, because if you start from a perspective that is already settled, then you are limiting yourself in terms of the creativity.
Yes.
And so I think maybe some projects could be worthwhile to, get free from the technology, at least or in the first, or in the beginning, in the first phase, and then I don't know.
Yeah,
just
this is a discussion we have all the time,
Yeah.
many designers, as you can imagine. But then we would not be Fraunhofer if we didn't develop ICT. So it means that whenever we find as I said, whenever we find something that for which digital technology cannot be the answer, then we don't do it, or we just raise the flag.
Maybe it's not the technology as we see it currently, but maybe you can just have a breakthrough, like a radical innovation, if you do this detour. I don't know. I'm just saying, because it's not the thing of saying, let's take a technology out of the process. It's just, okay, let's look into this in a free mode, and then maybe we'll find out a better way to introduce technology afterwards. I don't know. I'm just putting
That makes sense.
sharing the ideas with you, because for me it's like it's a concern to start a project with this limitation, with this constraint. You see, that makes me like raises some ethical issues in my mind. But I understand that limitation. Yeah.